Hi, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, bringing you my team into round 3. Now, there's been a few changes, and this will be my 2-week summary. Normally, it's week to week. I do apologize. I've been a little bit busy. End of term, a whole bunch of stuff happening as well, but I do want to get out and put up my team. So I want to talk about how I got into the position I did to begin with, because the last video I flagged was actually 3 sort of options on what I was looking at. And I had a few people messaging me saying, did you go Whitfield? Did you go Whitfield? And I am so glad that I did not. Now, we'll talk about my side first of all, but I feel like it's really been about Minesweeper, where looking at some options, and I could have easily got Bruin, I could have got Fife, I could have done a whole range of things, and I've been extremely lucky at this point where when you're kind of tossing up between two and it's a 50-50 call, there are a couple things that I sort of thought about where I'm like, oh, I'll just do this and I'll play it this way, and it just seemed to work out well. I know a lot of people that didn't do well. If I didn't VC Wits in round 1, I definitely would have had Laird as my option, so that would have been a big backfire as well. And if I didn't have Wits as my VC, I don't think I would have VC'd like an English or someone if I went that way, so kind of lucky in a sense, and I think a lot of people are hurt for that one. So the first week, I think I got 2,124, and I was ranked 5,400 or something. I think I was ranked about 5,000. Now, I have moved up a little bit. I think I was just under that. I have moved up a little bit. So this week, I scored 2,296. A little bit off Chris, mainly because of the whole Daycos factor. Chris also VC'd Laird, whereas I VC'd Bontempelli, because I was hoping he would go big and I didn't want to get tempted by a Laird 120. And in the end, I got tempted by a Bontempelli 125, which I took, which was quite lucky because Green didn't do well. And I probably lost myself with about 20 points there, but not too bad considering. And I banked that 125, so that was a very good decision there at that point. So I'm actually looking pretty good as far as the positioning at this current point in time. Ignore those trades there. I won 4 out of 6 leagues. So I'm positioned pretty well. Now, the reason I'm positioned well is because a lot of people are now shifting to my side. And there are some options that I'm sort of looking at this current point in time as far as the positions and trades that I will make in my side. Now, when I was tossing up for round 1, Whitfield, it was either, and I was talking to Chris, I was like, okay, I can get Whitfield, or I can split him and I could go Setterfield and Callaghan. Now, that worked out really well, even just for the first week, because Callaghan and Setterfield both pretty much went 100 in that first week. So I was like, okay, that was really good. And Whitfield got injured on like 30 odd. So that would have hurt me so bad. It would have been bad. And then I'm not sure if I would have brought in Setterfield for Whitfield. I might have tried to get a Daycos, or might have tried to do something fancy. And then all of a sudden, Settergoat would have absolutely torn up. So really happy with my decision-making there, where I was trying to split a couple of mid-prices and tried to cover my bases a little bit more. Now, the other benefit was because of that, because I looked at my side, I was like, I don't have too many mid-prices in there. I've kind of gone mostly premiums with a few cheaper options, and I was really keen on that mid-prices strategy to try and split some of my premiums to then allow me to be quite aggressive. And remember, going into the season, I was talking about being super aggressive from, between round 6 to, round 10, and trying to be super aggressive if the rookies show up. So when we look at my side, I did bring in, and I had Cunnington. Now, he wasn't someone I was overly considering too much. I was looking at their draw thinking, hey, he could get off to a flyer. And the roll was good. I was like, okay, well, let's maybe just kind of go with this whole Cunnington train. I toyed up with Sheasel and not starting Sheasel and starting and trying to get too smart for myself. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll start Flanders because everyone's going Sheasel, and maybe I'll throw 50K on him. Horrible idea. So I'm really glad I went with Sheasel, and I thought, don't overcomplicate it. I did have Sheasel on my bench, though, for that first week. And in the end, I was like, look, I'm not a huge fan of Davey. I'm not a huge fan of Long. So I actually brought Sin into my side during round 1 to allow me to take Sheasel, which then allowed me to bank that. And it allowed me to sort of shift a few things elsewhere. So I was happy to take, Sheasel's score on field. I think I pushed like Cunnington in the midfield to sort of take his score, and it worked out fairly well. In week 1, I probably would have done better, except I think I had Mackenzie on the bench, but it did allow me to take Sheasel, so there's a little bit of points there. It also did allow me to then loophole. So with Sin in, I loopholed Ashcroft, and I know a lot of other people did that had Mackenzie on the bench, but I loopholed Ashcroft in. I was like, boom, 105. So then he played on field. And then I got into this really weird situation last week where I was chatting to the normal footy chat that I'm in, and I had, so my forward line was Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Goulden, Zeeble, Sheasel, and then I had Cunnington. Now, remember, if I loop, so I had Ashcroft playing and I had to loophole in onto field. And I was like, okay, so Mackenzie did pretty well the week before that. Cunnington was then, because of my loophole in the forward line for Sheasel, I had to then get the loophole into my midfield. So Cunnington went back forward. And then I'm looking at it going, well, hang on, now I'm tossing up between Sheasel and Cunnington to play. And it's a really weird position to be in because it's like, hey, do I trust the guy who's played one game but scored really well? Or do I back in a guy that was 420,000, meant to be a premium-ish, right? And his role did change slightly, which annoys me. Or do I back him in? Now, the weird position I found myself in is because I was like, everyone's having Sheasel on field, which means I could look like an absolute genius, or don't overcomplicate it. I didn't know, if some of these other mid prices were going to fire. Like if Horn Francis went absolutely big and he became a must-have, I'm like, okay, so I need cash with Daycos as well. I think to sort of at that point we're like, okay, well, Daycos maybe already played at that point, so I'm like, I might need to kind of make some moves here. So what I did was I actually went and traded out Cunnington, banked 258,000 in cash, and got Filippo. Now, Filippo did hurt me a little, scored okay, but the week before that, round 1, he got like 8 contested possessions, did really well, and I thought they used him a little bit more and he could get his own ball. So I was like, okay, kick 1 goal, he got 79 points or 80 points. So I was like, okay, this is looking good. Contested ball, get your own ball when it's in the forward line. I was like, okay. And then the week just gone, it was almost like they parked him in the pocket. And he was near it, but he wasn't there. And he still kicked 3 goals, but only got 59 because he wasn't actually up the ground much at all. Now, I'm not sure if it was just more, matchup dependent or what it was, but still can't be too upset. I think there is a big game coming from him. I only just brought him in though, so I'm not like Chris or someone else trying to get rid of him. If I started him, I'm not that upset to get rid of him if I had him, but I've just brought him in, so I'm not going to bring him in, and take him out because that's not the way you play. So I brought him in. He's best 22. I think he'll continue to play. Hopefully some forwards come back in and freeze him up a little bit further up the ground. And I think he will also get stronger because he was one of the youngest AFL draftees. So the longer he plays, the longer he's in a system, he's going to get better, more confident, and the teammates will look for him more. So I do expect some good scores to come at some point. So for me, I'll just kind of sit and hold on that one and hope to make 100 to 150 on that trade. So now I'm in this other position where I've got 258,000. Now, that's the other reason why Chris got ahead of me, because he used that cash that he had from Cunnington, because he went Cunnington to Sheasel before the bounce. Lucky man. And then he was able to then invest that into Daycos last week. So I was pretty much going, it was Daycos versus Callahan, except I had Callahan and money. So that's where Chris kind of overtook me this week. The benefit I have, though, is I don't really have to do much this week, to be honest, if I don't want to. Now, the flip side is because people are going to try and get in like Zeeble, they're going to try and get in Setterfield. The only one I really need to kind of get in my side is Daycos. Now, the reason I need to get him in is he's jumped like 25% ownership in 2 weeks. And if he keeps on keeping on the way he's going, I can't afford to be the one person that doesn't have him, especially seeing that I'm now already in the top, like near the top 1,000. So you talk about half the competition. If he just keeps banging out good scores or averaging 100 to 110 and everyone's getting him at 500,000, I can't afford not to have him in my side, which means that for me, the priority is Daycos, and that priority then overrules a Ridley. I'd rather probably sideways Ridley and just go, okay, I thought Ridley would be top 6 or thereabouts. Yes, he still might be. Yes, I think he'll probably go well this week, but there's more range as far as his overall finishing, where I could just kind of lock up Daycos, watch and get more data as the season progresses, and look for my other opportunities for premiums. So Ridley could easily be flipped up with any other number of premiums probably throughout the year. I still think he'll do well, but it's more about that priority where Ridley's 10% or less and probably falling, whereas Daycos is, 55 and climbing. And that's just about mitigating that risk and trying to keep the advantage that I already have. So keeping the advantage I already have is also where I'm looking at maybe actually making some moves. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. So I know that I need Daycos. I know that I feel compelled to get Warple. And the reason I feel like I kind of need to at least explore the Warple train is it looks like he's going to make some good money. His role is good. He's using it a bit better. He's simplifying his role and what he's trying to do. But also everyone's trying to get Zeeble. They're trying to get Setterfield. They're trying to get LDU. They've got a Gorn injury. They're trying to get Daycos. Whereas my team is pretty well looking good. So I'm in a position where I feel like I have to kind of explore Warple because I can and others can't. And that's the difference. The only other flip side is if I kind of sit on my team a little bit, is that I have an extra trade or two compared to other people. Now, that could also be very beneficial, but it's not really going to net me more points at this point in time. And all I do is I keep my nice little 2-week buffer on the competition. And as you know, that can really slide pretty quickly because I'll still probably trade the same amount of times between round 6 to round 10. It just means that by the time I get to a finished side, I might have 1 or 2 trades left if I have luck with injury. So it's not that much of an advantage except for the fact that I do have a really good starting side to begin with. So, and have a little head start on some people. And that kind of, Chris, myself and Swizz were talking about I guess people are really happy to use their boost at the moment. I kind of wish you couldn't. And I don't know if anyone else feels this way. If you pick someone who was in 4% and Setterfield and Zeeble were very low owned, and now people can use a boost for week 1, week 2, and fix their sides, and now everything's the same. Lots of sides are the same. So, Darcy Cameron, LDU, Daycos, people are just throwing trades in to fix their sides really quickly. And because people are throwing trades out early, all the teams are now very similar. So I'm not sure how I feel about that as far as, and obviously it's a bit biased on my opinion because obviously I picked a couple of good players this time around, but I kind of would prefer you being forced to go early or use 2 trades in the first 3 rounds that you can't front load and fix and hope for some luck. But I imagine it'll all balance out in the wash, and we do know that from this point forward is where the fun really happens. So when we get into it, now my options are Hopper's out. I have thought about going Hopper out of my side. Now, he'll probably get up next week. He had a really good score of 119. Is he going to be impacted by his knee? There's a few variables as far as, does he miss another week? Probably not. How is he going to go with that knee? Is he going to be still explosive enough, etc.? That's an unknown. So he might even drop a low score when he comes back in. So there's a little bit to be had there. And again, Hopper doesn't trump Daycos, in my opinion. I need Daycos. So I'm looking at ways to get him, which means I might actually need to get rid of someone that I wouldn't mind. So for me, it pretty much comes down to I could go Hopper and I could go Jones in defense to Daycos and Warple. So I've pretty much gone, okay, well, look, I do like Hopper, but I can get Warple and get that 30,000, put it on Jones and get to Daycos. So now I've got Doherty, Ridley, Daycos, Jinby, McKenna, Constable. And then all of a sudden I've got very similar lineup in the midfield, except I'm now just banking on Warple over Hopper. Warple will still make, I think, good money, probably just as much as Hopper would, except maybe quicker because he's a bit cheaper. And I guess he's had 200 scores instead of a 60 and a 120. Plus, he also plays this week, so I can bank on that. And they play, I think, North Melbourne as well, so he could do really well. So that's one option I'm looking at. So that's then 2 trades to do that. I can then get rid of probably Chesser, who I'm not keen on. I am going to loophole probably Wilmot for tomorrow night's game, just because if he goes really, really well, I might then actually, and Chesser's dropped, which I probably expect to happen, I can then switch in Constable and take that score for Wilmot, and I definitely will be doing that. The other consideration is I actually do want to get rid of Chesser from my side because I don't want him. He's a sub-risk. He got subbed out of the game, played poorly, scored poorly, low time on ground, so I do not want him in my side. But if Wilmot goes really well, I will live with that and trade him probably sideways at another time. And that's where I kind of sit with it. Whereas Chesser for me is going Chandler. And I'm going Chandler because I think if he gets named to this week, which I expect he will, D's, if they win, I expect they name him to play for West Coast as well. They travel as well to West Coast, so if you have other injuries or people coming back in, it's probably easier for them to play someone like a Chandler, and I think that they might have room for him. So it's a risk I feel I'm willing to take in the case that if he plays this week and next week, I think he's going to make me about 100,000. And I think that risk alone is worth taking, and sometimes you just have to hit and hope that he plays 3 or 4 games, and the trajectory that he's on, I should be able to make 100 to hopefully 150, and I just need a little bit of luck. Now, if I need to cut him short because his sub or gets dropped, then so be it. That's the risk you take, and that's the risk that you're going to take for everyone. I mean, you look at McLean dropped, Chesso, who we thought was really good, is subbed out of the game, so there is definitely risk with some of these people, and you just have to not go, oh, there's no role or he can't keep it, because otherwise you stack in previous years would have done no good, and a few others that you kind of just hope and expect that will get kicked outside. And Marshall, even a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, Billy Longer, I can't believe I thought he was better than him. And Marshall's just a place setter until Billy Longer comes back. Nah, Marshall kept on killing, and form will dictate obviously who's in that side. So I'm keen to venture down that one. I would go and get rid of Ridley over Doherty, mainly because Doherty is a premium and they have a soft run coming up, so I do want to back him into that. When Walsh comes back into that side, I think it then allows him to play a little bit more of that general role that he is used to rack up the pill. So I think he's probably the better bet out of it. I do like Ridley. He was on 50 around that at halftime, and then Chris was talking about how the Suns were trying to block the switch, so they couldn't really go through him. Redmond got a couple of kickouts, even though he got the lion's share, Ridley, but Redmond wasn't going to him. He was just going long the other way. So I think there's still a lot of scope for him to do well, and especially playing against Saints this week, he's probably going to towel up, which is why I'm kind of considering trying to keep him so I can watch him for a little bit more to then decide, and I'd have the extra premium in my side. So I can't be that upset. If I'm getting rid of a mid-pricer to then go, okay, well, one mid-pricer, Jones, out of my side, and I don't mind Jones, but he did score me 5 points at halftime and then injured. 76 slow burner on this one and came good. So he's not going to make cash extremely quickly. So again, it's about looking at sacrifices, and he's someone that I wouldn't mind sacrificing. Now, if I had the money, I'm actually $100 short of going Callahan straight to Daycos, and that sucks. So if I could have done that one, I would have just gone Callahan to Daycos and called it a day. So I can't do that. The only way I can actually get him in my side is if I went, say, Chesser, and I went him down to Long or Davey. And yeah, look, they're fairly good shakes, but I don't like West Coast draw coming up for a small forward. Davey was doing well at halftime and then literally dropped off a cliff, and both of them are very, very, very likely at some stage to just drop a stinker. Like, we talk small forwards getting like a 30. So Long has done well. He was extremely quiet, I think, for about 3 quarters, 3 and a bit, and then came out with some really good scoring. So there's definitely consideration there. But I'm not really that keen on them, and I've already got pretty good depth and coverage on my list. I don't really need many rookie corrections. For me, it's kind of like Chandler, and Chess is probably the biggest stinker out of that. Green, 49, I'm probably keen to hold for a little bit, just because I think he'll make a little bit of money. He might get to 200 or hopefully kick a few goals and not kick 4 behinds or 5 behinds or whatever he did 4. Hopefully kick some goals and gets you the 80 that he could probably pick out once in a while, and then try and get me towards that 200 and then try and flip him and make a little bit of money. So he's someone that might be a slow burn. I'm not super keen on him, but for me, Chesser is the priority. So so that's pretty much where we're looking at. And I'm not sold on Callahan, but I figure he'll make a little bit this week. I can watch him again. Apparently, the stinger to the shoulder, he's fine. I'd rather Hopper over Callahan, and I'd rather try and sort of do that. And that's where we pretty much sit. So VCNC this week, I'm thinking probably Bontempelli into Laird, and mainly because when you look at the matchups, I think it's a must-win for the Dogs. Bont is one of the dogs that's actually been working really hard defensively as well, pushing hard into, makes balls or trying to dive towards balls, towards the other team's goal line. And I feel like his work rate is up and really high. And this is a game that the Dogs have to show up for. And if you know the Dogs have to show up and it's a high tense moment where the pressure's been on them and they're playing the Lions, who don't really pay much attention to any midfielders as far as accountability, I think Bontempelli's could go really well. So I do think Dunkley could go well because he's playing against his old side. It'll just mean that every ball that he touches will be contested. And you'll probably get a few of the old cheapies off the ball, I imagine, a few rough shots. So for me, yeah, Bontempelli VC and Laird, I can't see faltering in Adelaide. So they're playing in Adelaide against Port Adelaide. So if there's one time you want to show up, it is in a derby. So I am actually quite happy to ride that train. I don't see him failing again especially at home, but also not failing in a showdown. That's one game you definitely get up for if you're in Adelaide. So I expect it to be quite a cracker. I expect Rosie to go big. I expect Laird to show up as well this week. So that is my team. That is how I have progressed over the last couple of weeks. I have considered the notion that Chris is doing and getting rid of Wits for a Cameron and going and getting a Daycos and getting a Cameron in my side. But if I could get Warple with it, I probably would, but I'm a little bit short in that area. And it then makes it not as worthwhile I can save myself 135,000 or whatever it is. I'm like, okay, well, what am I doing with it? If the answer's not much, then I probably don't really want to change the status quo. Chris is putting a lot of faith in or risk in Gawn being the number one. And when he comes back, he might not get back until round 8. And then you've still got to wait a couple of rounds for that to drop. You're still then relying on that cover and Cameron to do well enough to hold you there. I just think Cameron's good. He'll probably drop an 80 or so at some point, and then he'll drop back down towards 500. And then if he is a must-have, I can pick him up for probably around 500 soon enough anyway. And those 120s are definitely average is out of his cycle. But I do think Cameron has a really good draw coming up as for a ruckman. And I think Collingwood, the way they're scoring, the way they're playing, I think he's someone that could definitely flourish. So I am watching him and I do want him, but I don't know if there's enough room for me to make those changes because, again, I don't have many issues with my side. So I'm not sure why I would try and trade and change my side just to kind of suit it to other teams. I think I've just kind of go, okay, well, look at what I've got. And for me, it pretty much comes down to I can get rid of Ridley and then I can go and upgrade. So I could just go Ridley straight to Daycos and then I could just spend my money and upgrade. I could even upgrade bloody Chesser straight to Warple and then I could actually keep Hopper for a week is another way to think about it. I'm kind of keen to keep Ridley as the extra premium. Otherwise, I've now just gone and I'll just push Mackenzie to the bench. I'm not really getting many more points on field. It does help me for this week if I do keep Hopper with that extra player. But then it's like, okay, well, I can either play, Jones and Callahan and Hopper essentially, or I can go, okay, well, now I'll go keep Ridley. So it'll be Ridley and Warple up against, Hopper, Jones, and whoever else. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. I don't mind the Hopper and Jones to Daycos and Warple. I think it just keeps that balance up a little bit. Jones is probably a little bit of a slower burn. And then I can keep Ridley. So, challenges. And definitely things to think about. I do like LDU, but I don't have any issues in my midfield. I've gone 3 deep. I think that's probably the way to go with all the mid prices available. Teams that have 4 deep mids, I think I've had people email me and message me about getting rid of Neil for like a Darcy Cameron or trying to help in other areas of their team. That makes sense if you have a midfield that has enough coverage. So I think if you have 4 or 5 mids, you can definitely get rid of one of those premiums that isn't performing and then use that money to kind of help diversify elsewhere. So I'm also trying to watch out for Bose next week, which is the benefit of, I guess, keeping Callahan. If he doesn't look like he's going that great, I should have enough money to then go Callahan straight to Bose if I need to. But the other thing I'm also conscious of is if I do have Daycos there and then Bose comes in at, D4, then all of a sudden I've got like Zeeble, Sheasel kind of going in there later and I'm not as concerned in my defense anymore with McKenna in that position. So yeah, look, that's pretty much where we're at. I might loophole in like an emergency on, say, Baker and Wilmot this week just to kind of see what happens there, where I can use Sin. If I'll probably also then put, I might even loop Callahan actually in the midfield otherwise, because GWS do play before Port. So I can see if Callahan goes well, or if he cops another knock and scores a 45, then he can stay there, and I'll just switch Sin with Filippo, and then he can then play on field and cover me that way. So that's another consideration that I am looking at for my team. It's just about trying to keep that flexibility, to be honest. Yeah, so look, there's no right or wrong way, and I probably haven't helped you because, like, as you know, I'm trying to go through the thought process myself, and even now I'm sort of tossing and turning and sort of debating with myself as to what the right play is. I feel the extra premium, even though it's at the cost of Hopper, is probably the play. Extra premium probably makes more points on field instead of having more mid prices spread a bit more. So it's, yeah, I don't know. Crossing up the cash generation with the points on field, it's a tough one. So I like LDU, can't fit him in, and I think that's pretty much it as far as the main players this week. So let's go and lock in some kind of strategy. And I'm going to, I don't like Jones as much. He's okay. But on field, if I can get rid of him, I think that's probably the way to go. Otherwise, it'll be, say, Ridley out. Let's try both ways. Let's go. Okay, so Ridley out, and let's go Daycos in. Go the old side swap here, and you are done. I've still got 260,000 because I've got a lot of bank here. Chesser, you're no good, mate. And Hopper's out for a week, so let's go and shore up some stock here. And let's go then the Warp Master. So I've got 384,000, and then that would be me done in this instance. So that would be Ridley to Daycos and Warple for Chesser. Now, that now allows me, I've got my loop here in Sin, but I have a really good bench line. I would then use my possibly additional for Chandler on green. Is it worth it? That's probably a little bit more questionable. And do I also want to use my boost just to kind of sideways green? For Chandler, maybe. I think I probably would. Warple then goes on, obviously, for Hopper. So then, Hopper's captain, geez. On for Hopper. So that kind of now makes my team fairly strong for this week. And I think that's definitely a pretty good option to go with. Team hasn't really changed much, except for the fact now I've got 74,000 that I can kind of throw onto a Callahan if he doesn't fire for a Bose, and try and sort of secure up something for next week if that is the case. Team, I think, looks pretty good. So that's the first one. The other one that I am looking at is probably going into the one that I was talking about here. So Hopper, try and get some points on field this week. Hope for a bit of luck that Hopper stays out or he pulls up a bit of a stinker. And then going and bringing in your Daycos and your Warple that way is probably the other way, where now when I have a look at my team, the midfield mix and everything else is pretty much the same as what it was, except Warple now replaces Hopper, and now I've actually got Daycos sitting there instead of Jones. So it does reduce the risk in Jones as far as his scoring fluctuations. It does then get rid of Hopper, and I do get an extra premium on field. So points versus generation, I'll lose one cash generator, Hopper and Jones. So I'll lose one cash generator, replace it with Warple. Am I better off? Am I worse off? More points on field? Yes, I need Daycos at any cost. Yeah, that rhymed. So that's the flip side between the two. And I'm not sure which one I'm going to take. So look, I might just go, it's early in the season. I might actually just go the cash and go Chesser to Warple. Let me know what you think. Help me out. Help me out. Let me know. I always answer your questions, and this is the harder one because I don't have much to do. I literally don't have much to do. I could just sideways Ridley and upgrade Chesser to Warple. Problem solved. And keep my Hopper, keep my Callahan, and then wait a few more weeks, get a little bit of cash, see what's what, and then make some changes from there. From round 6, where I want to be aggressive, which is why I kind of want to save my boost. So I can use that in round 6 and get premiums and try and start to flip and get Clary ASAP. So that's me, VC and C. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what trades you are doing. Let me know your journey, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.